I was cleaning out my father's office when I found something that made my blood run cold. Bank statements showing my college fund had been empty for years, while fake documents had been covering up the biggest betrayal of my life. The man I trusted above all others, who preached about education and integrity every day, had been systematically stealing from my future to fund a secret gambling addiction that would destroy our entire family. Let me tell you how I discovered that everything my father taught me about honesty was a lie. Growing up, my dad was my hero. Robert Chen worked as the head accountant for our school district, and he was obsessed with education. Every report card, every parent-teacher conference, every college prep meeting, Dad was there, taking notes, asking questions, making sure I understood that education was the key to everything. He'd grown up poor, the son of immigrants who worked multiple jobs just to survive, and he was determined that I would have every opportunity he never had. "Sarah," he'd tell me over dinner, "your education is the most important investment we'll ever make. It's something no one can ever take away from you." Our house was filled with college brochures by the time I was in 8th grade. Dad had spreadsheets tracking tuition costs, application deadlines, scholarship requirements. He knew the acceptance rates at dozens of universities off the top of his head. Every month, he'd show me statements from my college savings account, watching it grow from $12,000 when I was 8 to what appeared to be nearly $85,000 by my junior year of high school. Dad made saving for college feel like a family mission. We'd clip coupons together, and he'd put the saved money into my education fund. When relatives sent birthday money, he'd match it dollar for dollar before depositing it into the account. He drove a 15-year-old Honda and wore the same 3 suits to work for years, always saying the money was better invested in my future. Our Sunday morning tradition was going through the college fund statements together. Dad would point out the interest earned, explain compound growth, and project what the account would be worth by the time I graduated high school. These moments felt sacred. Just me and Dad, planning my bright future together. He'd talk about how proud he was of my grades, how I was going to be the first person in our family to graduate from a top-tier university. "This is your ticket to the American dream, sweetheart," he'd say, pointing to the growing balance on the statements. "Every sacrifice we make now is worth it for your education." The summer before my senior year, we visited 6 different colleges. Dad took vacation days he couldn't afford to lose, and we drove across 3 states looking at campuses. At each school, he'd ask detailed questions about financial aid, scholarship opportunities, and payment plans. He seemed so prepared, so confident about our ability to afford whatever school I chose. That fall, I applied to 12 universities, including several Ivy League schools. Dad helped me with every application, staying up late to proofread my essays and calculate the total costs of each program. When acceptance letters started arriving in the spring, he was more excited than I was. Harvard, Yale, Stanford, schools that had seemed like impossible dreams were suddenly within reach. "We can afford any of these," Dad assured me when I worried about the costs. "That's what the college fund is for. This is why we saved for 10 years. I chose Northwestern University for their journalism program. The total cost would be $68,000 per year, but Dad seemed thrilled with my choice. We sent in my enrollment deposit in April, and he immediately started talking about dormitory shopping and orientation week. Everything felt perfect. Then in June, just 2 months before I was supposed to leave for college, Dad's world came crashing down. It started with a phone call on a Tuesday morning. I was working my summer job at the local library when Mom called, crying so hard I could barely understand her. "Your father's been arrested," she managed to say through her sobs. "Something about the school district's money. They're saying he stole money." I rushed home to find FBI agents searching our house, carrying boxes of documents and computer equipment. Dad sat at our kitchen table in handcuffs, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. When our eyes met, he couldn't even look at me directly. The initial charges were devastating enough. Embezzlement of nearly $300,000 from the school district over a 5-year period. But as federal investigators dug deeper into Dad's finances, they uncovered something that made my heart stop beating. My college fund was empty. Completely empty. It had been empty for over 3 years. The bank statements Dad had been showing me every month were fake. He'd been creating them on his computer, carefully doctoring the numbers to show steady growth while the real account balance remained at zero. Every dollar that should have been mine had been diverted to cover gambling debts at the local casino. Agent Morrison, the FBI investigator assigned to our case, sat me down 2 days after Dad's arrest to explain the full scope of the financial destruction. "Your father has been gambling heavily for approximately 8 years, she said, spreading documents across our dining room table. He started with small bets, but the amounts escalated quickly. When he ran out of his own money, he began taking funds from the school district accounts he managed. But what about my college money?" I asked, though I already knew the answer would destroy me. "The college fund was depleted in March of your sophomore year. Your father continued to show you fabricated statements to maintain the illusion that the money was still there. In reality, every dollar had been gambled away within weeks of being deposited. I stared at the real bank statements showing my account balance. $247.83. 10 years of saving. 10 years of sacrifices. 10 years of dreaming about my future. Reduced to less than $300. But the betrayal went even deeper. As investigators traced the money trail, they discovered that Dad hadn't just stolen from the school district and my college fund. He'd been systematically draining every account our family had. My parents' retirement savings, the emergency fund, even the life insurance policy they'd been paying into for 15 years. Everything had been liquidated to feed his gambling addiction. The fake college fund statements weren't Dad's only deception. For 3 years, he'd been forging documents, creating false financial records, and lying to everyone around him about our family's financial stability. Every conversation we'd had about college costs, every reassurance about being able to afford my dream school, every moment of pride when he talked about providing for my education, all of it was built on lies. The man who had taught me that integrity was the most important virtue had been living a completely fabricated life. Northwestern University revoked my enrollment when the tuition payment bounced. Harvard, Yale, Stanford. All the acceptances that had once felt like the culmination of years of hard work suddenly became painful reminders of opportunities I could no longer afford. My guidance counselor scrambled to find me a spot at the local community college, but even that seemed financially impossible with our family facing bankruptcy and legal bills. Dad pleaded guilty to multiple counts of embezzlement and fraud. At his sentencing hearing, he finally addressed me directly for the first time since his arrest. "Sarah, I know I've destroyed your future," he said through tears. "Every day I told myself I was just borrowing the money, that I'd win it back before you needed it for college. I thought I could fix everything without you ever knowing. I never meant for this to happen." But his intentions didn't matter anymore. The damage was complete and irreversible. Dad was sentenced to 6 years in federal prison. Our house went into foreclosure, and Mom and I had to move into a tiny apartment across town. The community that had once respected my father now whispered about our family scandal whenever we went grocery shopping or attended school events. My senior year of high school was consumed by legal proceedings, financial meetings, and the constant humiliation of being known as the embezzler's daughter. I did eventually go to college, but it took me 4 years to save enough money for community college and another 3 years to transfer to a state university. I graduated with massive student loans and a degree that came 6 years later than originally planned. By then, most of my high school friends had finished college and started their careers while I was still struggling to afford textbooks. The worst part wasn't the financial devastation. It was realizing that the person I'd trusted most in the world had been lying to me for years. Every family dinner where Dad lectured about honesty, every time he helped me with homework while secretly doctoring bank statements in his office, every college planning session built on money that no longer existed. All of it was performed by a man living a double life. Dad was released from prison 3 years ago, but our relationship has never recovered. He lives in a halfway house 2 states away, working minimum wage jobs to pay restitution to the school district. He writes letters apologizing and asking for forgiveness, but I've never been able to respond. How do you forgive someone for stealing not just your money, but your faith in family itself? The gambling addiction counselors say Dad's behavior was driven by disease, not malice. They explain how addiction distorts thinking, how addicts convince themselves that their next bet will solve all their problems. I understand the psychology, but understanding doesn't heal the damage done to our family. Today, I work as a financial counselor, helping families plan for their children's education expenses. I've become obsessed with transparency, with showing clients exactly where their money is at all times, with building financial plans that can't be manipulated or falsified. My colleagues think it's thoroughness, but I know it's trauma. I'm trying to prevent other families from experiencing the betrayal that destroyed mine. Sometimes clients ask why I'm so insistent on multiple verification systems and independent account monitoring. I never tell them the real reason, that I learned the hard way that the people you trust most are often the ones capable of the deepest betrayal. Family is supposed to be the foundation you build your life on, the one relationship you can count on when everything else fails. But what happens when that foundation is revealed to be completely hollow? When the person who taught you about integrity has been living without it for years? I still dream about the life I was supposed to have. Graduating from Northwestern at 22, starting my career without crushing debt, having the confidence that comes from knowing your family supports your dreams. Instead, I learned that sometimes the people who claim to love you most are the ones who will sacrifice your future for their own immediate needs. Dad didn't just steal my college fund. He stole my ability to trust family unconditionally. And that's a theft that no amount of restitution can ever repay. If this story struck you, like and hit subscribe for more real emotional stories. And let me know in the comments. Do you believe some mistakes can never be forgiven?